Good afternoon, everyone. To our respected panelists, Dr. Maria Elena Ismandin, Dr. Inario J. Hinampas Jr., Dr. Francis Jus Ibanez, and to our research instructor, Ms. Rose Ann Palma, good afternoon. We are Group 3 and also the sixth presenter. Our research is entitled Incentive Impacts of Tertiary Education Subsidy on Grantees' Academic Needs and Efforts. To be presented to you by Mr. Makayan Angelito C., Mr. Barreto RGB, Ms. Furnace Desiree J., and yours truly, Ms. Waliunelfumi G. Chapter 1, The Problem and its Scope. Rationale. Excellent educational background has been the dreams of millions of people, but economic conditions become a hindrance for this dream, especially for the non-affluent families here in the Philippines. But as what Arnie Duncan quoted, the cost of college should never discourage anyone from going after a valuable degree. In tertiary education, financial need is a requirement and not an excuse. This need led the government to intervene in providing grants in aid programs to all state-run universities and colleges, and few private universities and colleges. In pursuant to Republic Act No. 10931, which aims to provide all Filipinos with an equal opportunity to quality tertiary education, the Unified Finance Assistance System for Tertiary Education Act, commonly known as the Republic Act No. 10687, apportioned billion worth of budget for tertiary education financial aid. Under this act is the Tertiary Education Subsidy or TES, a program that aims to extend financial assistance to qualified students to support their college education. Through TES, a grantee will be given an amount of 40,000 pesos if enrolled in state university colleges and 60,000 pesos if enrolled in private universities and colleges for the whole school year that covers their allowances, boarding fees, transportation, book and supplies, and other educational related expenses. In academic circles, students' needs are academic needs, and effort is the exertion in doing school works, participating, having study habits, and in showing competence. Many studies already assess the utilization of government subsidies to the grantees' education. However, there is a lack of papers assessing and verifying its incentive impacts on the grantees' academic needs and efforts. The researchers are personally motivated to undertake this study because two members of the group are TES grantees. Instead of simply interviewing students about its incentive impacts to their academic needs and effort, we'd like to conduct a formal study to verify how impactful TES is. This paper will focus on the incentive impacts of tertiary education, subsidy on the grantees' academic needs and efforts. This will be conducted at Bull Island State University main campus. This is the only state university located in Tagbilaran City which is a beneficiary of TES. This study will benefit the students, the school, the community, and the Commission on Higher Education or CHED as a basis for its implementation in the campus. In addition, this study is significant in identifying factors that affect students' academic effort, and it also raises possible topics for future research. Based on the above information, the main objective of this study is to determine and assess the relationship between the incentive impact levels of tertiary education subsidy and the academic needs and efforts of the grantees, as well as to examine the relationships among other variables. For the theoretical framework and legal basis of our research study, I'll give you Mr. AJB Barreto.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nelfi Miswalyo. And again, good afternoon to our thesis panel, Dr. Maria Elena Ismandin, Dr. Renario G. Hinampas, and Mr. Francis Jus Ibanez. Also to our instructor, Ms. Rose Ann Palma, to our thesis committee, Dr. Arceli Hernando, with Dr. Bernarda Villarojo, and to my team, once again, a pleasant afternoon. Let's talk about literature background and theoretical framework. We all know that this chapter is more on previous study that connects to our study. The content of this chapter focuses on the context of subsidizing tertiary education, its incentive impacts on its grantees, needs, and effort, and of the variables mentioned and interaction of each. First is the academic needs, followed by academic effort, which is our independent variables. Then, study habits, competency development, and also talks about participation. Next is the courses in different departments and the number of years of student scholarship. Since we found the study that it can affect student financial needs and effort over time, it can be advantage or disadvantage. Examples that being a scholar or a grantee of subsidy for too long is likely to have incentive effects on students. So that was from Sahin 2014. After the number of years, we also support some study from incentive impacts of subsidies on academic needs. Next is the incentive impacts of subsidies on academic effort, and the financial, and lastly the non-financial. So the non-financial will be more on motivational characteristic. So now let's go on theoretical framework. This theory concerning incentive and academic needs and effort. So authors have given their contribution to this important aspect of relationship. So let's start from monetary incentive efforts theory. This model relates to our study because it clearly indicates varying effects on monetary incentive to the effort. A subsidy is considered as a monetary incentive for its purpose. The model features one of the quantifiable variable in our study, the effort. The model includes theories that details the mechanism through monetary incentive to lead to increase in effort. Second theory, incentive theory of motivation. So this theory relates to our study because it emphasizes the role of incentive to the motivation. Motivation is one of the non-financial needs of the student in our study. So this theory also clarified that psychological, social, and cognitive factors can all play a role in what incentives someone find motivating, and it applies in subsidies. This could mean that incentive impact level of this subsidy may vary. To some, it may impactful, to some, it's not. Lastly, the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Maslow hierarchy of needs relate to our study because it provides a model on how students are motivated to learn. Without the lowest layer of the hierarchy being met, students cannot reach the next level, which are internal needs. This hierarchy includes one of the quantifiable variables in the study, the academic needs. It indicates the utmost importance of attaining the academic needs of the student to perform well in academic. And the other side is the legal basis. Section 1, 2, and 5 of the Article 14 on Education of the 1987 Philippine Constitution is more the right to education. To promote the quality education at all levels, we have to establish a free, cheaper, and accessible education through implementing scholarship grants to deserving students. Relates to our study about the incentive impacts of one of the subsidy that government implemented on the student needs and effort. So this section serves as a basis to our study that can contribute for a betterment of local educational policy and financial program, particularly the tertiary education subsidy, which is tackled in the section 5. In connection to this is the Universal Access to Quality Education, or the Act of 2017, or Republic Act number 10931. This is to provide free higher education in state university colleges and local university colleges, and of course to adequate funding so that it can increase participation rate among all socio-economic classes in tertiary education in both private and public educational institutions. Under the Section 7 of this Act is the tertiary education subsidy. So these theories and legal basis will be a foundation to our study. Incentive impacts on tertiary education subsidy and grantees academic needs and effort, with its variables, grantee needs, non-financial, and the grantee's effort, the participation, study habits, and competency, and lastly, the proposed action plan. So that is more on the theoretical framework. So this is all my report, and to continue, let us proceed to Ms. Desiree Perones.
Thank you, Mr. Barato. To continue, I am Desiree J. Faranes, and I will be discussing the statement of the problem, statement of null hypothesis, and significance of the study. Now, for the statement of the problem, the main objective of this study is to determine the perceived incentive impact level of tertiary education subsidy on the academic needs and efforts of all the continuing grantees of Bohol Island State University main campus. Specifically, it aims to answer the following question. Number 1, what is the profile of the respondents in terms of A. Year level, B. College, and C. Number of years being a student grantee? We want to know what is the current year level of the student and where or what college they belong and how many years are they receiving the subsidy. Number 2, what is the perceived incentive impact level of tertiary education subsidy to the 2.1, the needs of the grantees academically in terms of 2.1.1 financial and 2.1.2 non-financial, and the efforts of the grantees academically in terms of participation, study habits, and competency development. Number 3, is there a significant relationship between 3.1 respondents' profile and the perceived impact level to their academic needs? 3.2 respondents' profile and the perceived impact level to their academic efforts, and 3.3 the perceived impact levels to their academic needs and academic efforts. Number 4, what action plan could be proposed based out from the findings of the study? For the statement of null hypothesis, it is stated here that there is no relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. Now, the null hypothesis number 1 in our study is there is no significant relationship between the respondent's profile and the perceived impact level to their academic needs. Null hypothesis number 2, there is no significant relationship between the respondent's profile and the perceived impact level to their academic efforts. Null hypothesis number 3, there is no significant relationship between the perceived impact level to the academic needs and academic efforts. Furthermore, the significance of the study. This research is significant to the following. First, the students. This will help them to be immersed as they are the first-hand recipients of this said research. For this program, their participation will also be another approach for enhancement as they are directly involved. They were the one who are impacted and they were the one who received the subsidy. Now, next, the school. This will help them determine how effective scholarships and grants are based from the response of the students. This will also serve as a basis for the evaluation of the implementation of TES in the campus. The school also serve as the bridge of the CHED's subsidy to the students. Next will be the Commission on Higher Education, or CHED. This will help them determine how far did their mission and goal reach after they established this act. It will also help them realize how impactful this program for the student grantees. They were the one who implemented the subsidy, or the so-called tertiary education subsidy. Next, the future researchers. This research will then be an aid for future researchers as a related study and be subject for what is lacking on this study. To continue, I will be giving you to Mr. Angelito Makayan to discuss the research methodology and the definition of terms.
Thank you, Ms. Forones. So to continue, I am Angelito C. Makayan, and I'll be presenting our research methodology and definition of terms. So first is our research methodology. So for our research methodology, first is we have our research design. So for our research design, the researchers will be using the descriptive correlation design in this study. The study will be descriptive since it aims to define the study and determine the incentive impacts of tertiary education subsidy on grantees' academic needs and efforts. It will also be correlational since it determines the relationship between the two quantifiable variables, the perceived impact level and the academic needs and efforts. Next is we have our environment and participants. For the environment, the study will be conducted at Bohol Island State University main campus, PG North Avenue, Tagbilaran City, Bohol, because this university is the only state university located in Tagbilaran City, which is a beneficiary of tertiary education subsidy. The study will also be the pioneer of having these variables to be studied in the locale. So the universal sampling will be used in the study, catering all the 729 continuing TES student grantees from all the colleges of the campus. Next is we have our instruments. So the researchers utilize a Likert scale in the questionnaire in determining the incentive impacts of tertiary education subsidy on grantees' academic needs and efforts. Some assessment items are constructed based upon the following studies. So we have two following studies. The incentive effects of higher education subsidies on student effort by SAIN 2014 and utilization of the CHAD UNIFAS tertiary education subsidy by the students of a State University, Philippines by Magao, Sia, and Gonzalez 2019. So the respondents will answer the questionnaire by checking the box corresponding to their choice. Our Likert scale has 5 choices. So first is 5 for strongly agree or SA, 4 for agree or A, 3 for undecided or U, 2 for disagree or D, and 1 for strongly disagree or SDA. So each scale and description has an equivalent range, and the range will be interpreted as incentive impact level. So here is our table. So the incentive impact level on academic needs and effort. So first is we have a scale of 5. Its range is 4.20 to 5. Its description is strongly agree. Its incentive impact level is highly impactful. For the scale of 4, its range is 3.40 to 4.19. Its description is agree. Its incentive impact level is impactful. For the scale of 3, its range is 2.60 to 3.39. Its description is undecided, and its incentive impact level is neutral. For 2, it has a range of 1.80 to 2.59. Its description is disagree, and its incentive impact level is not impactful. And for the scale of 1, its range is 1 to 1.79. Its description is strongly disagree, and its incentive impact level is highly not impactful. Next is our data gathering procedure. So we have 4 phases here. So we have phase 1, asking permission. So the researchers will present a letter of approval to the campus director of Bohol Island State University main campus to conduct a study inside the campus or to distribute the questionnaires to the students of Bohol Island State University. The researchers will also present a letter of permission to the Student Affairs Office or to SAO to get the names of the student grantees to be our participants. For the phase 2, constructing the instruments. So for the purposes of this research, survey questionnaire will be used as an instrument for data gathering procedure to answer the purpose of the study and to acquire the information needed. So some assessment items are constructed based upon the following studies as mentioned earlier. So the incentive effects of higher education subsidies on student effort and utilization of the CHAD UNIFAS tertiary education subsidy by the students of a state university, Philippines. So the survey is created using suitable statements modified from related studies above mentioned and individual questions formed by the researchers. So next is phase 3, conducting the pilot testings. Of course, pilot testing is needed. So before starting the data gathering procedure, the research tool will be subjected for reliability and validity test to ensure that the quality of data that will be gathered from the respondents is accurate. So the pilot testing will be conducted at Bohol Island State University Calapi campus outside the target participants with 30 randomly selected TES grantees as participants. So the researchers will also present, of course, a letter of approval to their campus director to conduct the study there and to their SAO to get the names of student grantees. The pilot testing will be done twice with the same questionnaire with 3 days interval to check the consistency of the participants' responses. So the questionnaire will be validated by a statistician who is an expert in the field. Last is phase 4, conducting the survey. So before administering the tool, the respondents will be oriented and informed about the purpose of the study and the questionnaire that they will answer. So the researchers will also emphasize that their identity and privacy will be ensured and the answer to the questionnaire will be confidential to others, according to the Data Privacy Act of 2012. So the researchers will distribute the questionnaire to the respondents through Google Forms. The respondents will be given time to answer the questionnaire, and all the complete field of questionnaire will be gathered and will be collected for data analysis and interpretation to get the output and findings of the study. So based on the data that will be gathered, the researchers comes up with a conclusion and recommendations for this study. Next is our statistical treatment. To interpret the data effectively, researchers will use weighted mean and normality test as the statistical treatment tool to interpret the data. So first is the average weighted mean. So this will be used to determine the assessment of the respondents with regards to their personal profiles. So the formula is here, where X is the weighted mean, F is the frequency, X is the weight of each item, and N is the number of cases. Next is to determine the relationship of the identified variables of the study. This data will be subjected to normality test. So the result of the normality test will serve as basis in determining the appropriate statistical tool in computing the correlation coefficients. So that's for our research methodology. Next here is our definition of terms. So note that our terms here are defined operationally and fitting to our study. First is academic effort. So this refers to the learner's personal exertion in their studies in terms of participation, study habits, and competency development. Next is academic needs. So this refers to the learner's needs in education in terms of financial and non-financial. Next is competency development. So this is the development of skills, attributes, and behaviors that are directly related to successful performance on their studies. Next is financial. So this refers to the monetary matters pertaining to educational related expenses. Next is grantees. So this refers to the person to whom a grant or conveyance is made. Impact. So this refers to a strong effect or influence on someone or something, especially to academic needs and efforts. Next is incentive. So this refers to the thing that motivates or encourages one to do something. Next is non-financial. So this refers to an individual's psychological, social, and emotional needs. Next is we have the participation. So this is the engagement in school activities and the act of joining others in doing something in the class. Next is study habits. So these are behaviors used when preparing for tasks or learning academic material, such as having study sessions, studying with friends, jotting down notes with highlighters on it, something like that. And last is the TES. So this stands for Tertiary Education Subsidy. It is a government grants and aid program for higher education. So that's all. Thank you. So that's from the group 3, 6 presenters. So now we're ready. Our group is ready for the comments, suggestions, and recommendations from our dear panel.